Hi guys. So today I'm going to show you how to make Italian truffle carpaccio cheese. This is kind of my own recipe. Onto the ingredients. So what you'll need is some good quality milk. So today I'm going to be using whole milk. You'll need some lemon juice. Just raise the acidity a little bit. I do use cultures. I make my own cultures by so there will be some cultures in my milk already. But for the purpose of this post and for the purpose of like if you're a beginner, then you don't need the cultures. You can make cheese without cultures. That would be more for like intermediate and advanced kind of cheese making. You'll need some lipase. The lipase enzyme gives it the flavor of more like an Asiago. There's a lot of cheeses that use lipase, Asiago, Pecorino, Parmigiano, even some cheddars use lipase. And then rennet. Now I'm using animal rennet, and if you're vegetarian, then you can feel free to use. I would use a double strength vegetarian rennet. For an animal rennet, you can just use a single strength. We'll also be using pots, obviously to cook the milk. So I'll have two pots. I'll have a 6-quart pot, and then I'll have another pot which I think is 8-quart. It's about 2.5 gallons. Right now, as I mentioned, we have our milk in the pot. This one's about 2.5 gallons of milk. It's been sitting for about 30 minutes. You want to have the milk come to kind of room temperature, about 70 to 75 degrees. Kind of on its own. You put your culture in it, and you want the culture to start doing its work. So before we put the rennet in the milk, what we need to do is acidify the milk. So that the rennet can do its magic and have the milk coagulate. And generally, it's the cultures that do that. So I put my own cultures in it, and it slightly, as it warms up, it slightly acidifies the milk just enough for the rennet to do the work. But what I like to do is I like to add just a little bit of lemon juice. You'll probably, if you've tried to make cheese on your own, like maybe ricotta or something like a farm cheese or something like that, you probably have used lemon juice or white vinegar in order to curdle the milk. And basically what you're doing is you're acidifying the milk, and you're taking the cheese curd, you're separating the cheese curd from the whey. What we want to do is not let it get to that part where it curdles the milk so much that it completely separates from the whey. What we want to do is just bring the acidity a little bit higher, and that's why I find that lemon juice is perfect for that. Our lemon juice. Getting our lemons, getting a fresh lemon. Now again, it depends on how much cheese you're making. So basically I just do like half a lemon for about 1.5 gallons. And I do slightly a little bit more for 2.5 gallons. So remember, it's not, you don't want to put too much because you don't want to overly curdle the milk, but you want to put just enough where it's just starting to aid the acidification a bit. Okay, so that's perfect. If you get a little bit of pulp in there, not a problem. It will just make the cheese taste a little bit better. All right, so we have our squeezed lemon juice, and we're just going to put a little bit in here. Don't mind my shaky hands. That's about 1/4 cup, maybe half a cup. This, what you see up here, is not curdling. This is actually butter. It's if you buy whole milk, full fat milk, like 4% milk, you'll see the cream at the top, and it starts to, and it kind of coagulates while it's in the fridge. And that's how they make butter. They take the cream off. They skim the cream off the top of the milk, and they make butter out of that. It tastes really good. So one day you'll have to try it. All right. So while we're waiting for the milk to, to do its magic, we're waiting about 30 minutes. We're about 9 minutes left into our timer. We can prepare the truffle carpaccio. So the one I use is this, I think it's called Dittman's truffle carpaccio. I love it because it's just thinly sliced truffles in olive oil, so the oil itself has a wonderful flavor to it. So why don't we start with getting this prepared. We will need about half of this. So I think it's 180 grams, actually. Yeah, it's 180 grams. I was having a hard time finding it. Costco sells it. Awesome price. So we'll use about half of it. Now the thing is that because it has oil, you want to try to dry up the oil that's around the carpaccio, okay? And the reason why is because you want the cheese to start coagulating, and if you've got oil in it, then what will happen is it won't coagulate as you're pressing it. So you want to kind of, actually that's about right. It's about half a bottle. All right, so we're looking at 180. It says about 60 grams of carpaccio. And so what you can do is you can just kind of get some paper towel and just lightly. You don't want to kind of squeeze. You don't want to damage the carpaccio. You don't want to so you just want to kind of lightly squeeze it and let it absorb in the towel. All right, and then this will be ready while we're waiting for the rennet to do its magic in the milk. This will be kind of air drying, and it will be ready for when we have to cook the cheese curds in the cheese. Okay? While you're waiting for the temperature to come up to about 80 to 85 degrees, so right now we have about 24 minutes left in our timer, you can start preparing your rennet. So rennet is another enzyme, once again, but it's a coagulant that you use for cheese. And again, all these enzymes are found in the calf's stomach, and that's how they extract it. And the calf uses it in order to digest the milk and to extract any of the nutrients out of it. And we use it to make cheese. For 2.5 gallons of milk, what I do is I put about 6 mil of rennet. If you use less cheese, it's generally between 3 to 4 mil of rennet. So you can prepare it by just getting a quarter cup of water, distilled water or filtered water, and then adding your rennet in. We can then put it into the cheese and let it do its magic. Put it on low again. I'm going to be turning this on low. And we want it to reach about between 80 to 85 degrees. Okay? Now before we do that, we want to instantly try to make sure that the milk, especially if you have a large pot like mine, which is deep and narrow, like this is pretty deep and narrow, you want to kind of stir it occasionally because all the heat will stay at the bottom and you want that culture to kind of mix in nicely. At this point, what makes the cheese quote unquote Italian is adding an enzyme called lipase. And lipase kind of gives that Asiago slash pecorino slash Parmigiano type taste. So I add lipase. I keep my lipase in the freezer. So why don't I just go ahead and get that? I'll prepare it and I'll show you how to add it in. Okay, so we're at the point where we're adding the lipase. Now, lipase, you don't have to add it during the time that that you start to heat up the milk. You can add it right at the beginning and just let it kind of hydrate in the milk. Lipase powder it just looks like this. Again, it's an enzyme, and so it depends on how much milk you're using. So I'm using 2.5 gallons for this one here. Generally, I put about 2 ml, so half a teaspoon per gallon and a half. But because I'm doing 2.5 gallons, I'll be putting 4 ml, so almost a teaspoon. I personally like the taste, and everybody that I've had taste my cheese likes that flavor. So it depends on how much of a strong flavor you want in your cheese. If you want a lighter, just a hint of that kind of Asiago type taste or Parmigiano type taste, then you can put less. And if you want it a little bit stronger, more like a pecorino or something like that, then you can put a little bit more. But I just find that just having 4 ml for 2.5 gallons is perfect. And then again, as the cheese ages, it will just have much more flavor. So I've added that in. I've just lightly stirred it. It's currently around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, so maybe 76, 75 and a half. So what we'll do is we'll just let that come up to temperature. At about 90, 97 degrees. So we can turn off the stove at this point. Set our cap aside there. Slightly stir it. You can see here there's a little bit of slight curdling, which is fine. You don't want to overly curdle. We can add our prepared rennet, and we want to stir. We want to stir for about 30 seconds. Okay, and while we're stirring, we want to make sure that it's a light stir, but we want to bring the top to the bottom to the top. We want to make sure that it's properly stirred nicely. Okay, and I think that's about 30 seconds. So at this point, after we've left the rennet, we put in the rennet. What we're going to do is we're going to let it sit for 60 minutes, 1 hour. The cheese has been sitting for a good hour with the rennet in it, and it's fully coagulated. I'll show you a little bit what it looks like on my second camera. You can see that the cheese has kind of like sunk to the bottom, and that's what you want. You want it to coagulate, form like one clump of solid mass of cheese, and that's the beauty of this cheese. The other one is just the same, which is nice. The internal temperature, even though we've turned it off, has remained between 87 to 90. The second one has stayed at 95, which is good. But now what we want to do is we want to cook the curds a bit. We want to release the whey out of the curds that have kind of clumped together. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use a knife. Now I have to use a nice long knife because my pot is very deep. So in using the long knife, we want to just cut it in like 1-inch sections.
It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, the wonderful thing about cheese is it's really forgiving. So, so you just do 1-inch clumps or 1-inch cuts, sections. And then we want to kind of stir it. So you'll see here, oh, look how beautiful that cheese is. Look at all that curd. It turned out really nice. And you can see, remember I was telling you about that butter on top? So you can see a little sheen here on here. And that is basically butter. It's oil from the butter that's in the milk. And so now what we want to do is we want to kind of cook this because we want to release the whey out of the curds. And so we want to bring the temperature up to between 110 and 115 Fahrenheit. So we want to bring up our temperature, again, depending on your stove, the stove that you're using, electric, gas, or induction. You know, you don't want to burn it. You want to just slowly raise it. So on this element, you know, I've put it at around 6 at like a medium heat. On the other element, it's going to be a little bit lower because I don't want to burn the bottom of the curds. Again, occasionally as it's coming up in temperature, you want to stir the curds. So you can see here, it's what's it at? 84, 85, 87, 88. Wonderful. It's at 90. Yeah. So this kind of temperature is at 90. So you want to just kind of cook the curds here. So we've raised it to about. So we've raised the temperature. We need to now just bring it up to about 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll go ahead and do the same with my second pot. And then while that temperature is coming up, what we want to do is prepare a kettle. I have my kettle here. Fill it up with some clean, filtered water. And we want to boil the water in that kettle because we want to bring that temperature all the way up. So we could cook it in here even more, but by removing some of the whey, we will end up removing maybe about a quarter of the pot or a third of the pot. We'll take the whey out and then we'll add fresh water in it, boiled water. And what that does is it helps with the lactic acid when the cheese is aging. Okay, me here again. All right, so this is still sitting for your 30 minutes. While the temperature is at 110 and 115. I just wanted to quickly just show you what I meant by, when the curd is, look at that. You see how it's like sticking together? It's just beautiful. Look at that. You know that? You remember earlier it was more like in cubes and it looked a little shinier and, it was a little bit looser, the curd, where now the curd as it's cooking, it's getting a little tighter together. So that's exactly what you want. So once we get it to between that temperature, the ideal temperature of 110 and 150 to 115, then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the stove, let it sit for a good 30 minutes before we remove the whey. Okay, we've come to the point where we have to remove a third of the whey. You'll probably see me going from pot to pot. The process is all the same. Again, it just depends on which one is ready first, just for the sake of the video. Otherwise, I'll be here all day. So now what you want to do is you want to take a third of the whey out. Now again, this is amazing whey. This is the leftover. That's the whey that comes from after making the cheese, and this is full of flavor. Again, you'll see the butter that's like the butter oil there that is at the top. You can do a lot of stuff with this. I make a lot and I kind of give it away. I have friends who drink it. You can put it in bread. You can put it in your smoothies. It's full of flavor and very good for you. So this is about a third of the pot, maybe a little more. So you could see here that as I mentioned earlier, the cheese curd has clumped together, you know. It looks really good. So now what we want to do is we can turn on, actually leave it off, because we're going to see if the temperature is still good. Yeah, the temperature is still good. It's actually at 115. So what we can do is we can take our boiled water. Now, you know, when you do this, you know, recipes and procedures online kind of says you want to slowly add the hot water to your cheese curd over a period of 15 minutes. You don't want to like kind of put it in there. In my case, because I like a drier cheese, you know, I'm going to be aging it to like a nice aged cheese. It doesn't really matter to me. I want to get it at a nice temperature. The only reason why I'm adding this water is so that I can control how much lactic acid is in the cheese when it's aging. So we are at right now a temperature, nice, about 130, 131. Yeah, so this is perfect. But 131 degrees, and so we can see here, and as you can see, as you're turning it around, it's actually getting a little bit milky. So it's releasing more of that whey that's in there. Okay. So now what we can do is we can leave this in here like this for about 15 minutes and let it just do its thing. Okay, so now we're ready to take the curd out and the cheese curd, and we need a ladle, a nice wide one like this. And what we're going to do is you see how that clumped nicely together. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in a strainer with a little bit of cheesecloth. And as we're adding the curd, you know, you can use some sea salt. You don't want to use iodized salt because the iodine, I think, does something to the cheese curd. I don't remember what it is, but sea salt's always better for you anyways. So you want to just kind of add it, mix it into the curd like this. Okay. Good. Let the cheese curd absorb the salt. Sweet. Okay. All right. So at this point, if you're only making the Italian cheese and you're not, you know, adding the truffle in it, you at this point would jump right to the mold filling, and we're going to show you how to do that later. But for this recipe, what we're going to do is we're going to start cooking the curd with the truffle carpaccio. So once we have it in our cheesecloth, we want to kind of drain the whey in it. Okay. And so it's nice like that. We get the whey that's in here, and we kind of empty the pot, not too much, and we just need a little. I always feel bad throwing this thing, throwing the whey. Okay, so I've left, maybe about half an inch to an inch of whey in the bottom of the pot. And this is where we're going to put our carpaccio in it. We want to turn on the, We want to turn on the stove, and we put it on low. It's at 130, actually, I'm wrong. Yeah, it's 145. Okay, so we want to put it on low. We don't want to put it on too high. And we want to keep it at between 135 to 140. We take our whey and we put it in the way that we have in here in the pot, because now what we're going to do is we're going to cook it a little more, and we're going to cook it with the carpaccio. Okay, so we take our spoon and just kind of break it up a bit. Again, you don't want the heat to be high. You want to keep it low. Okay, then we can take our carpaccio that we've drained. Have it right here. I'm going to throw it in here. Get all the deliciousness off this. Okay, and now this is when we want to kind of stir it. We want to get it in there and stir it properly. Okay, and as you can see, the carpaccio is there, and it's mixing in very well. Okay, and as you can see, as I'm pushing the curd around, it's releasing more whey, right? It's becoming more milky, but that's okay. That's okay. Well, it's come down to about 130, so we want to raise the temperature a bit. Make sure that it gets to about 140 degrees. All right, and we'll let this sit for 30 minutes at maintaining that temperature between 135, 140 degrees. Okay, we want that. We want the cheese curd to absorb all the flavor of the carpaccio, and occasionally you can feel free to stir it just to make sure that all the cheese curd is getting that flavor that we need. So we'll come back in about 30 minutes. Okay, now comes the time where we are actually filling the cheese mold. I have this mold here. This is a Manchego cheese mold. I love it because it's so easy. It comes into pieces, leaves a nice little design on the inside. I don't know if you've seen Manchego. It's like a Spanish cheese. But I just love it because you put it in here, you put it in your press, and then when it's done, you just, it just comes off, no problems. I had to kind of modify mine just so that I had to add a little bit more holes, just so that, to make sure that it drained properly, or at least the way I liked it to be drained. So anyway, so let's start doing this. Now, generally, when I fill cheese, when I do the mold filling, I do it in the whey. But with the carpaccio, I threw a lot of the whey out, so you don't need to do it. It just is. Now you want to make sure you've got all that wonderful carpaccio in here and the cheese curds. You don't want to waste any of it, because as you know, truffles are expensive. And milk can be expensive as well. The cost of living going up everywhere, so you want to make sure that you get as much of that deliciousness as possible. If you make a mistake, it's cheese. Like, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna waste it. You just throw it on some pizza and it'll be perfect, right? Okay, so we've put it in. We put it in our mold, and now we put the follower on it. You want to kind push this follower in here. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this to our press. Okay, so we have our cheese mold. We've just finished filling our cheese mold, and now we're going to put it into our cheese press. You can buy cheese presses. You can use you can also use olive presses. I personally kind of made mine. But anything that kind of looks like this works. You want to kind of make sure that you can put some pressure on it. So the type of pressure that I put on mine is you want to just tighten it to the point where you hear like it squeeze out a little bit. You don't want to you don't want to press it hard right away. So you want to do the pressing gradually. So I've given it, like once you start getting some resistance, you give it like a turn and a half, let it sit for like 15, 20 minutes. And then you can press it a little bit more. If you press it too hard, what happens is it squeezes out the sides, and then you kind of lose a little bit of the cheese curd, but you don't want to do that. So if you do a little at a time, then it's going to turn out perfect. Now this is going to sit in here overnight. Right now in my time it's about 12:30 noon. So this will sit all day, and then in the morning I'll take it out of the cheese press, and it doesn't have to be in the fridge, it can stay out. And I'll take it out of the cheese press, and then I'll show you what it looks like. This is the great reveal. This is how the Italian truffle Carpaccio cheese turns out. This has been about a week where it's been aged in the fridge. I basically on a daily basis I would flip it over, just flip it over, and you'll notice how, you know, as it kind of ages, it hardens on the top. And then when you flip it over, there's still some like white spots, and that's just because it's still aging, it's still drying out the cheese. This is perfectly edible as it is right now. However, as the saying goes, patience is a virtue. So what I will do with this, I'll probably let it dry for another day or two. And then what I'll be doing with this is I will be putting it into a brine, a saltwater brine, and let that sit for about 16 hours overnight. Really, I do it during about 16 hours, maybe 24 hours. You can brine it as long as you want. It just dries out the cheese a little bit more and infuses more salt into the cheese. Then what I'll be doing after that, after it's been brined, I'll be airing it out, letting it dry properly. You'll notice there's a sheen on here. That's because I coat my cheese with olive oil. So grab a really good olive oil, and as it's drying out, you want to keep rubbing olive oil on it. It also gives it a nice flavor as well. You could use, if this is the Italian Carpaccio cheese that you're making, you could use the olive oil that was in the Carpaccio bottle. As I mentioned earlier, you don't want to throw that, you want to reuse it. But if you haven't reused it for risotto or for pasta or anything like that, you can use that, and you can just brush it on, and it will also help bring out that truffle flavor. I hope you enjoyed this this post on how to make cheese. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me some comments. If you like the video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. As I mentioned, I'll be posting some more cooking videos, doing it Dan's way. I love that play on words. Please send me some comments or some questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Until the next time, this is Danny saying bye.